Friendship City rose above us, concentric rings of stores and homes, connected by walkways and platforms that spun out from a central, spiralling stairwell ascending through the chimney-like open space, like a plume of smoke rising to the head of the pony of friendship. Crowds of ponies moved up and down the spiral stair, diverting onto the catwalks and merging with the traffic that surrounded the layers of scavenged material structures built into the interior walls of the massive statue. A city built from junk, a fair portion of it pulled from ships which had sunk in the harbour. A small forest of support beams further congested the lower levels. Ponies gathered around a watering hole called Sparkles, run by a friendly but slightly frazzled mare with the cutie mark of a sparkle collar on her flank. Her assistants moved between the tables nearby, taking orders and delivering homogeneous deep-fried foodstuffs. From a radio nearby blared the sound of heavy horns, marching drums, and rumbling thunder. Enclave music. Pony stopped to stare at us as Calamity and I walked through Friendship City. Conversations died on unfinished sentences. For once, their gazes weren't oppressing me. It was the presence of a Pegasus in their midst that snatched our attention. Invariably, their eyes would quickly search out Calamity's flank. We no longer wore the anti-radiation barding, having left it with one of Dr. Freshwater's more amiable assistants. Without barding or a battle saddle, Calamity looked strangely naked beneath his desperado hat. At the sight of Calamity's dash-eyed brand, nervous faces broke into smiles. We were soon mobbed by strangers wherever we went, all offering friendly greetings to my Pegasus friend and his little mare companion. I'd garnered no attention at all until two Friendship City security guards approached us, wearing heavy barding in cheery pastel colours that closely matched their manes. "Welcome to Friendship City, Calamity." One of them smiled, offering a hoof. Word of our visit had spread faster than the crowds had allowed us to travel. "And you must be the stable dweller that DJ Pony keeps cheering. It's an honour to meet you, miss." I felt myself blushing hard as I stared up at the security pony. "Sorry about shooting at you last week," the pony said, looking chagrined, offering me his hoof. I was reaching out to shake it when his dour partner groused sullenly. "I'm not." I froze. The guard looked to his partner in dismay, but the other pony stood her ground. "She shot them foals' parents right in front of him," she said, glaring at me. "With bullets of fire." My hoof dropped back to the scrap metal floor. "They call you the Hailmare, you know." The guard glowered. "The kids." The other guard, the buck, put a hoof over his face in embarrassment. "Alright, Nightbright, let's go." He looked at us regretfully. "Sorry about that, folks." As the two guards moved away, Nightbright looked back over her shoulder and mouthed slowly. "Bullets of fire." "Welcome to the Black Sea Supplies." The black mane indigo mare at the counter greeted us genially as she took in the sight of us. "My name's Black Seas. I'm the mayor of this fine city, and owner of this even finer store. And you must be Little Pip and Calamity." She smiled. "Word gets around fast here. Thanks for stopping in. What can I do you for today?" I looked around, feeling dazed. The small cargo ship that Black Sea Supplies was built out of had been cut apart and imported into the Pony of Friendship, then rebuilt almost completely. Metal flooring and rows of shelves had been welded into the hold. Narrow metal stairs led up to the living quarters, which had once been the captain's cabin. An old model precursor to the terminal, a combination of monitor and intercom system, was built into the wall behind a counter that looked like it had been scavenged from a diner. Calamity fluttered forward to greet Mayor Blackseas. "Pleased to meet you," he grinned back affably. "Mind if I take a poke around your store? I'm looking to do some trading." "Well, that's a damn fine coincidence." Blackseas grinned back. "That's what Black Sea Supplies is here for, after all. We got about everything you might be looking for. Here, let me show you." I watched in foggy amusement as Blackseas and Calamity dove into business. My Pegasus friend looking to unload a lot of what he had scavenged from the Ministry of Image in return for bottle caps, ammo, and medical supplies, with emphasis on Radaway. Blackseas was a skilled and charismatic barter mare though, and soon had him shopping for a gift for Velvet Remedy. Something to touch her heart and remind her that there really is good in ponies worth fighting for. My thoughts were still drowning in the cold reminder of Abu, leaving me detached from my surroundings and the conversation in front of me. I barely reacted when the door opened and an arsenic-coloured stallion brushed by, carrying a walking stick in his muzzle. I only reacted when the stick transformed into a magical energy blaster and he fired at the mare. Tart says hello. Calamity was faster, flying into Black Seas, knocking her out of the path of the shot and into a shelf of lunchboxes, sensor modules, and garden gnomes, which rained down on the indigo mare. The blast of lethal magic struck a display of steam gauge assemblers, pulverizing it. My first reaction was to play at little Macintosh, but, with a start, I realized my most trusted weapon was not with me. Calamity pivoted, weapons dropping to the floor as he stood between the assassin and Black Seas. The stallion shifted to get another shot, realizing he would have to take Calamity out to get at his target. I lashed out with my telekinesis, lifting the arsenic-coloured pony and pushing him against the far wall where two shells blocked his view of both my friend and the mare. I wrapped my magic around his neck, squeezing. The stallion kicked and flailed, his eyes bulging, the magical weapon dropping to the floor with a clatter. Black Seas was climbing back onto her hooves, a couple garden gnomes rolling off of her back as the assassin lost consciousness. I released him. The mare blinked slowly, shaking her head.
Well, looks like your reputation as heroes is very well founded,
she said, wincing slightly from a sprain.
Thanks for saving my life.
It's what we do, Calamity said, more for my benefit I suspected than hers. Why you reckon he was out to kill you? The mare frowned.
I'm pretty sure Raspberry Tart was behind this,
she proclaimed, trotting over to the old terminal. She pressed one of the buttons under the monitor and barked.
Tart, I need to speak to you right now.
The indigo pony tapped her hoof impatiently, glancing to Calamity.
Would you be a dear and tie that bastard up?
Her eyes dropped to the magical energy weapon on the floor.
How the hell did Lantern miss that?
I stepped up to where the weapon had tumbled, floating upwards to examine it. It was a model I never encountered before, but then I was barely knowledgeable about magical energy weapons. You might want to ask Grandpa Rattle about that, I suggested. The spell disguising the blaster as a stick was too similar to the old buck's magical research to be a coincidence.
I have a shotgun!
I couldn't imagine Grandpa Rattle working with murderous ponies though. At least, not willingly. I was suddenly fearful for the crazy old buck. The monitor flickered to life, showing the face of a grossly overweight, pomegranate mare with a yellow mane and an overly charismatic smile.
Oh, Mayor Black Seas, how good is it to hear from you?
Her words virtually oozed out of the speaker above the monitor.
And what do I owe the honour of calling you this evening? You know exactly what I'm calling you about, you murderous bitch!
Black Sea spat, stomping her hoof.
You just sent a pony to kill me! Language!
She chided, her smile unfazed by the accusation.
Now, it's hardly befitting of the mayor of our glorious city to use such foul sentiment. To go slinging such dreadful accusations. You deny it then?
Black Seas narrowed her eyes.
Well, seeing as the would-be assassin failed, I'm sure we can put this to rest after Chief Lantern has a day or two with him in her interrogation room. Oh?
The blob of a mare looked surprised.
He survived then. Good. The sooner the chief can ferret out the true culprit, the better, no? Although it will cut into your opportunities for slander. More's the pity.
I trotted up, floating the intended murder weapon in front of me. Black Seas looked at it, then back to Raspberry Tart.
And I suppose you don't have any idea how a weapon like this could have found its way into Friendship City? Shouldn't you be asking that to Chief Lantern?
She suggested. Black Seas nickered.
We both know that anything that finds its way into Friendship City behind her back has gotten through you.
The pomegranate mare feigned offence.
Despite what you claim, Mayor, the common room is not a den for smugglers and thieves. And, as the voice of the ponies, I would think you had more faith in them.
Her words washed over my ears like slime.
Besides, let's be honest, If I wanted to kill you, I would never use a cruel method. I'd poison your food.
Raspberry Tart got the reaction she was looking for. Blacksea's eyes widened, just for a moment before narrowing again. The overweight mare virtually purred in pleasure. I was beginning to deeply and egregiously dislike Raspberry Tart.
Now, be a darling and keep me informed, would you, Mare?
Raspberry Tart pressured.
As head of the merchants unit, I have a right to know about the shenanigans that threaten the peace and safety of our safe little sanctuary. Of course.
Mayor Blackseas groused before cutting the conversation. The mayor's expression was cloudy.
Slimy worm of a mare. Now Chief Landor will have to spare guards for this viper, just to make sure he doesn't have an unpleasant, life-ending accident before he can be questioned.
She kicked one of the scattered garden gnomes.
And now I'm going to be obsessing over where I can get my food.
Any way we can help? The mayor raised her eyebrows.
Can you get a confession?
She shook her head.
You've already helped me more than I could ask, but...
She stopped a moment.
If you could sneak a listening device into her office, above the common room, you may be able to catch her saying something about this mess, that I can take this to the council.
I grinned, crossing my pitbuck bonded leg in front of me. Sneaky is one of my specialties. My plan was simple. I'll use my stealth buck to turn invisible, slip past Raspberry Tart's guards and defences. Even if she's in the room, I'll be able to plant the listening device and get out unnoticed. I looked down at the MG Stealth Buck 2 set into my pip leg. I'd already used it to get in and then out of 10 Pony Tower. The device hadn't had much time to recharge, but if I moved swiftly and all went well, I would only need about 10 minutes. I don't like the timing of this, Calamity said, flying over me as I pushed my way through Friendship City towards Sparkles. My innards stopped queasing after Life Bloom had purged me of taint, and over the last few hours, my stomach began to rumble, reminding me that I hadn't swallowed anything other than water and rataways in days. At least half of my weaknesses were from starvation. You think the attack on the mayor has something to do with us? I asked. Calamity echoed my own concerns. For the attack to take place right after we walked into the store was a hell of a coincidence, and I was growing unfond of coincidences. Well, no, Calamity admitted. Not us, particularly, but between Red Eye and the Enclave and the death of the goddess, there's just too much going on right now for me to believe this all just happened now by chance. He let out a growl of frustration and dropped in defeat, hanging limply from his wings. Hell, for all we know, the Hellhounds may be plotting this. Pony napping and coercing ain't exactly outside their limited vocabulary. So this could be my fault, I moaned, staring at the floor. Add it to the list. Hey now! Calamity perked up, landing in front of me. None of this is your fault, girl. Red Eye's been plotting against the goddess and the Enclave since long before y'all stepped out of that stable. He argued with confidence. He was working on ways to get to the Ministry of Awesome, and chances are he'd already found one. He did already have griffins to help shut down the security systems. All he did was bump up the clock in the Enclave's arrival, and I reckon it's probably a good thing if it throws a bump on a Red Eye's wagon. I turned away, but Calamity grasped my head between his hooves and made me look at him, his wings flapping as he lifted back off the walkway. You're blaming yourself for those dead hellhounds? Maybe steel hooves? My wince betrayed me. Well, you can just stop that nonsense right now. You hear? You got the bomb away from Red Eye and used it to take out a genocidal threat. What do you think Red Eye would have done with it if you hadn't? He stared into my eyes forcefully. At best, he'd have done it himself. At worst, he'd have saved it to use on a pony population, standing strong enough to stand in his way. Hell, he was already threatening 10 Pony Tower with it. I realised I was crying. Ah, damn it, little Pip, Calamity said, his expression softening. Come here now. Let me get you something to eat. I followed him obediently. The crowd had thinned around Sparkles. The waitress mares were looking thankful for the respite. The music on the radio had been replaced by an authoritative voice. Colluding with a monstrosity in Splendid Valley, which called herself the Goddess. This goddess was the mother of the horrific alicorns who had been tormenting the Equestrian wasteland, endangering the lives of all good ponies like yourselves. But the fiendish plot of Red Eye and the Goddess made the murders at Alicorn hooves and magic pale in comparison. My face slapped into Calamity's backside as the Pegasus stopped abruptly, his ears up, listening. It was their intention to rip you from your homes and from your families, to force you to endure an agonizing, taint-driven transformation that would render you into a mindless slave. Red Eye and the Goddess has been working together, not just to take your freedoms or your lives, but to annihilate individuality and to devour your very souls. I stumbled back, shaking my head, then joined Calamity, wondering what the Enclave was up to. If they thought the Goddess was so bad, I whispered to my friend, why did they try to ally with her? Naturally, the Grand Pegasus Enclave could not let this stand. We may have been gone for a while, but we have not forgotten our unicorn and earth pony brothers and sisters. And we were not about to allow these abominations to violate and destroy all of you. That is why we detonated a megaspell beneath the home of the Goddess, the Maripony facility in Splendid Valley. My jaw dropped, the world seeming to spin out from under me.
Who the hell are you?
Raspberry Tart spat as she saw me.
What the hell are you doing in my loft? How did you get past my guards?
I'd planted the listening device and had been halfway out the door when the stealth buck died. The tub of pony flesh wobbled around to face me from her place in the lounge bed behind her desk.
Gizmo, get in here!
I felt a pony move swiftly behind me, blocking my exit.
Gizmo, escort our uninvited guest out.
The bulbous, pomegranate man requested of the stallion behind me.
Preferably through a window.
Wait, I said, thinking swiftly. I'm here about the contract on Black Seas. Raspberry Tart raised a mocking eyebrow.
What contract? Ah, now I remember you. You were standing in the background when our good mayor called up to start slinging accusations.
She hefted up one of the slab-like hooves, signalling the stallion behind me to wait.
Now, what do you want?
The gears in my head spun. The pony who tried to kill the mayor was sloppy and stupid, and now the mayor trusts me. I gave her my best conspiring smile. I could do the job easy and correctly, but it wouldn't be cheap. Raspberry Tart sighed.
Do you really think I'm that stupid? Did you really think you could pull the wool over my eyes that easily?
I found myself picturing the attempt to cover her with wool, the rolls of fat, the massive jowls. Not enough sheep in the world, I muttered to myself aloud before I could stop myself. She rolled her eyes.
You know, I really don't like being insulted, especially from my home invaders. Gizmo, tear the little pony's legs off, would you?
Whoops! I cantered, circling to see Gizmo. My eyes widened as I took in the surgical scars and the mechanical wings. Gizmo was a cyber pony, almost certainly a refugee from Stable 101. Gizmo spun, spreading out his wings to slash at me. I dodged to the side, the blade of those wings whisking through the air inches from my eye. I couldn't guess if those cybernetic wings would actually allow the Earth pony to fly like a Pegasus, but the wing feathers were razor sharp. Gizmo somersaulted, his wings lifting and slicing through the air at me as I dove for cover, casting about for something to use as a weapon. Gizmo spun again and bucked, turning the chair I'd moved behind into a battering ram that knocked me over. My armor took the blow, leaving me winded but unhurt.
Gizmo, stop playing with your food.
Raspberry Tart ordered lazily.
Just finish her off already.
I scrambled for the door. Gizmo jumped up onto the couch and leapt into the air, spreading out his wings. Maybe he couldn't actually fly with them, but they allowed him to glide. He swooped across the room and landed on me with all hooves, driving me to the floor. I focused, my horn glowing. I was weak and weaponless, but I'd fought my way through Canterlot, damn it, An old Olme. There was no way I was going to fall for some 2-bit Crook's augmented mook. I felt a hoof pressed down against the back of my head as Gizmo shifted so he could angle a wing up my neck. Then, I heard the squelching sound as I telekinetically drove my screwdriver down through his ear and into his brain. Gizmo collapsed off of me, twitching. It took him almost a minute to die. Pushing myself back up, I turned towards Raspberry Tart. Alright, let's try that again.
Or I could finish you off myself.
I don't think you could do that. I snarked. I'm not a pie. My horn glowed as I levitated Gizmo's body, pointing one of the razor wings toward her broad throat. Now, one last time. Raspberry Tart took fresh stock of me.
You might be useful after all.
Chief Lantern was standing with the mayor when Calamity and I returned to Black Sea Supplies. Did you get all that? I asked eagerly, the moment I trotted through the door.
Yes.
Black Seas informed me with a heavy tone, her expression cloudier than ever. I drew up short. This was not the demeanour of a mayor who just had her rival floated to her on a silver platter.
And almost immediately after, I got a call from Raspberry Tart, reporting your attempt to barter for my murder.
I stammered. What? Wait, I wasn't. I was just trying to get her to say that I wasn't actually offering. Chief Lantern waved a hoof.
Don't worry, girl. We know that. It would take an amazingly stupid assassin to negotiate a contract against a target she knew was listening to a device she planted herself.
Oh, I breathed a sigh of relief.
But Raspberry Tart covered her tail, made it look like she was just playing along in order to bring another wannabe assassin to justice. We can't just say anything and use it against her.
Calamity bristled. Well, how about her sticking the cyber pony on Little Pip?
You were invading her home,
Chief Lantern told me.
Anyway, it doesn't matter now.
Mayor Black Seas claimed.
We've got bigger problems.
Calamity whinnied. What now? Mayor Black Seas moved over to the terminal.
Just after she called us, Raspberry Tart made another call.
She pressed a button. An unfamiliar stallion's voice sounded through the speaker. Hello? Who is this?
Well, hello to you too, darling.
Raspberry Tart's voice slithered.
We're all set for your visit. I've cleared the way. When you boys get here, the doors will be wide open and waiting for 'em. The package they're looking for doesn't suspect a thing, but we've had one small setback.
Those aren't words I like. The stallion informed her coolly. You shouldn't be telling me words I do not like.
Mayor Blackseed's still gonna be a problem.
Raspberry Tart whined. The mayor and the security chief exchanged glances as they listened. I could hear a heavy sigh through the speaker. The mayor of that rusty monument you call a city was your responsibility. We're more than ready and capable of doing things the hard way if we meet any resistance.
Of course,
Raspberry Tart said, sounding a little worried. The stallion neighed. Personally, I'd prefer the hard way. Tends not to leave any loose ends.
No, that won't be necessary, darling. How long until we can expect your arrival?
There was a snort from the unidentified stallion. Our raptors are about 80 minutes out. Should give you plenty of time to fix your little problem. Or to flee the city. The Enclave was coming for Friendship City. I could just turn myself over to them, I offered meekly. The ponies gathered in the council room when we stared appraisingly.
What makes you think you're the one they're after?
Dr. Freshwater asked, raising an eyebrow. Well, I grimaced. I had no reason for my assumption, other than the timing and the fact that it always seemed to be me. Who else would it be? Ah, hell no! Calamity spat. He turned to the others. Y'all ain't handing any pony over to the Enclave. He paused, his determination melting into hope. Are ya? The door opened behind us, and Chief Lantern marched in, followed by several security ponies.
Raspberry Tart's gone. Looks like she took one of the boats. Good riddance.
Mayor Blacksea's knickered.
We can't worry about her now. Question is, do we fight, evacuate, or both? Do we have enough boats to evacuate every pony?
Dr. Freshwater asked, turning to the security chief. The pony shook her head sadly.
Maybe we did 5 years ago, but not anymore. We can get maybe a third of the population packed into the boats we have. Slightly less, seeing as Tart took one of them.
To be fair, I noticed disdainfully. She kinda took up a whole one herself. Calamity shook his head. If their target might be on one of those boats, they'll sink 'em. Chief Lantern growled.
We fight then. That's what we have those harbour guns for.
Dr. Freshwater looked at the others.
Are we seriously not going to put up negotiation on the table? Based on that recording, they only want one pony. How can we put the lives of every pony in this city at risk for just one?
She stared at us imploringly.
Shouldn't we even ask who they want?
And if it's you? Calamity nickered. Then what? The doctor frowned.
Well, then I try to get away. Alone.
Can we try to communicate with them, using Raspberry Tart's terminal? I suggested. If I was the Enclave's target, I was more than willing to give myself up to spare the city. And I was sure Calamity felt the same. But letting the Enclave close in on the city, while we waited to find out who they were after, felt like a tactical disaster. Not for the first time. I wonder what Steelhorse would recommend. Have recommended. The little pony in my head reminded me, bringing heavy clouds of sorrow. Chief Lantern shook her head.
Already tried that. They're not responding.
Not a good sign.
Sounds to me like they decided to do this the whole way anyhow.
I turned on my Pitbuck radio, listening to the Enclave's overriding broadcast in my earbloom. I didn't expect to glean any real clue as to what they were up to, but I felt I'd better start keeping appraised of what they were saying. For the moment, I was only getting dark, funeral-esque marching anthems. Steelhorse's funeral had been this morning. The loss of my friend wrapped my heart in chokingly tight sorrow. And the dour tones of the music were cutting at me like sharp metal wings. Calamity was off assisting Chief Lantern. A quick inspection of the harbour guns had revealed sabotage. Apparently, part of Raspberry Tart's clearing the way for the Enclave. The damage had been inexpert, and Calamity was certain they could have at least half of the harbour guns working again before the Enclave arrived. But they had to work fast. I followed Dr. Freshwater to the observation room and stared through the anti-radiation window. Greenish-yellow light poured brightly through the glass. Inside, Ditsy saw me approach the window and waved a wing. A device mounted into the wall clickety-clicked, reading the ambient radiation inside the room. Let's try it again. One of the lab technicians, a cream-coated unicorn with a cornflower blue mane, spoke into a microphone. Focus. The unicorn technician began to walk Ditsy through the mental exercises that young unicorn fillies and colts used to practice telekinesis. But Ditsy wasn't a unicorn. She had no magic. What could they be expecting? Whoosh! The radiation counter squealed as the light in the room became momentarily blinding. Ditsy tumbled to the floor comically, the burst of energy from her own body knocking her off kilter. Oh, very good. The unicorn technician cheered into the microphone, clopping his hoofs together in applause. Keep that up, and you'll be able to purge yourself of this radiation in just a couple of days. Inside the chamber, Ditsy pranced joyfully. Now, let's go again, the unicorn said with a happy chuckle. But, this time, try to keep centered so you don't keep knocking yourself over. I smiled at Ditsy and applauded too. Somehow, watching her joy made the storm clouds over my own head scatter, if just for a little while. The music in my earbloom ended, and a voice began to speak. I turned away from the glass, listening. I didn't want Ditsy to see the expressions I expected to play across my face. Greetings, ponies of the equestrian wasteland. The grand Pegasus Enclave embraces our earthbound brothers and sisters. I know many of you are mourning the loss of Canterlot, such an iconic symbol of Equestria that was. But That royal city was destroyed centuries ago, and all that remained was a breeding ground for monsters and poisons. Sometimes, in order to allow the body to heal, we must cut out the infected flesh. I could feel the scowl forming on my muzzle. I didn't like where this was going. It felt like more than just excusing their attack on the Canterlot ruins. Burn away the diseased areas before the infection spreads. I winced as a blast of static through the broadcast, nearly making me kick my earbloom off. Good evening, children. DJ Pony's voice burst over the airwaves. It's me again, your old pal, DJ Pony, coming to you from a secret location somewhere in the Equestrian Wasteland. You didn't think I'd abandon the Equestrian Wasteland just because of the little enclave, did you, children? Now, old DJ Pony ain't got a lot of time before Big Sister Enclave shuts this down. So, let's get right to it, shall we? That's right, it's time for the news. Yes! The little pony in my head was bouncing around gleefully. Yes, 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 yes! Now, first up, the truth about what went down in Maripony. Now, I've got my information from irrefutable sources here, children. And I've got to admit, the Enclave is right about one thing. The goddess was a big and bad threat, as they're making her out to be. But that's where the truth stops, and the lies begin. Irrefutable sources, I assumed, meant she'd been watching from the towers. But wait. Now, I don't know what the Enclave were out at Maripony for, but it sure as hell wasn't to take care of the biggest threat the Equestrian Wasteland has ever known. No, that deed was performed by none other than your and my favorite heroine, the Stable Dweller. My ears were burning, but I was too happy just hearing Hamaja's voice, disguised as it was, to mind. And the bomb she used to do it was the very one Red Eye was threatening Ten Ponytail with for weeks. Turns out, our heroine taught Red Eye into giving up his big trump card. Oh! Irrefutable sources! Hamaja watched my memories. So, that casts serious doubt in the whole Red Eye Goddess Alliance that the Enclave has been spouting off about. They're lying to you, children. Plain and simple. Now, DJ Pony still doesn't know what they're up to. But, I can tell you this. The Grand Pegasus Enclave are not your friends. Now, keep an eye out, cause I'll be... Another burst of static, and DJ Pony's voice was gone. I floated off my earbloom and held it to my breast, basking in the knowledge that Hamaj was out there, still alive, and fighting the good fight in her own, very important way.
Attention, citizens of Friendship City.
The armor-altered voice boomed over the city's public address loudspeakers.
We are here to take into custody a Pegasus wanted for crimes against the Grand Pegasus Enclave. His name is Radar. You can recognize him by the following brand on his flank.
I stared up at the nearest loudspeaker, a grey box attached to one of the support beams outside Sparkles. I'd just made it back to the watering hole and was waiting for Calamity to return when the Enclave announcement started. I checked my pit-buck clock. The Enclave was early. We had almost 20 more minutes. The mayor had made her own announcement, urging ponies to return to their homes less than 10 minutes ago. Mayor Blackseas had called it an exercise, knowing that panic would cost lives. But an exercise didn't have a lot of motivating power. The central chimney wasn't anywhere close to being cleared. Our raptors are 18 minutes out. But their armored troops were much faster.
Failure to produce this Pegasus and turn him over to the Enclave will be considered an act of collusion. Prompt compliance will be rewarded. Refusal will be met with force.
The ponies who stopped to stare and listen began to panic. Ponies began racing up and down the stairs, pushing into each other. A cobalt-coated buck screamed as he was knocked over the railing, falling 3 stories to slam heavily into the ponies racing about the floor below. Somewhere, the voice of a scared foal cried out. I launched out of my seat, looking around for the source of the voice. With a bang, the doors into the central chimney swung open, and the nightmarishly armoured forms of 4 Enclave Pegasi moved in, their scorpion-like tails curling slowly, the antenna-like integrated weapons of their Enclave armour pulsing with coloured light.
Every pony, stay where you are.
One of the Pegasi.
We are the Enclave. We're here to bring one pony to justice.
Many ponies stopped, frozen in their tracks. Others raced for the nearest doors, diving inside. I could hear the foal crying under the thunder of hundreds of frightened whispers.
We will be searching the premises.
The Pegasus informed the crowd.
Do not attempt to hide. Do not attempt to flee. Do not attempt to interfere. Obey, and we will be out of your mains in short order.
The Pegasi beside him stepped up, as the 2 behind him started to fan out, moving through the crowd. The Pegasus called out, "Any pony with information leading to the swift arrest of the Pegasus radar will be rewarded with the finest fee of 5,000 bits." To their credit, not a single pony in Friendship City stepped up to take their offer. "Fuck you!" a mint-coated buck shouted from the spiral stairwell. The Enclave pony looked up at him. The gems on her armour glistened. Fisht! The ponies around the buck scattered as he turned into a glittering pile of ash before their very eyes. 2 more ponies in the crowd broke into a run, trying to make it to the door of one of the shops. Fisht! Fisht! The glowing bolts of magical energy threaded the crowd, striking their targets. One of the ponies vaporized, her ashes scattering across the door as she tried to reach it. The other collapsed onto her side, screaming in pain. I repeat, do not attempt to hide. Do not attempt to flee. Do not attempt to interfere. Obey! I was trembling. If I had my sniper rifle, all 4 of them would be dead right now. One of the black-clad Pegasi started to move through the patrons of Sparkles. She stepped close to me, walking around behind me as she looked me over. I forced myself to stand there silently, knowing any action could put ponies in danger. She paused, her visor turned towards a pit buck melded to my leg.
Oh, Everfree wins.
She whispered in revulsion, moving quickly past. I caught sight of the little, wine-coloured filly curled up under the foot of the spiral stairs, shivering and whimpering. My heart went out to her. I started to inch closer, hoping I could comfort her. I made it halfway when she saw me, her eyes opening wide with utter terror.
Help me!
She screamed, scrambling up and fleeing from my sight. No. Vshh! No! The foal's momentum had carried the glistening pink ash as she glowed and disintegrated, fanning it out across the metal floor. My world shattered apart. I collapsed, my hooves raising to my muzzle as if they couldn't contain my screams. No! Brightwing, you just shot a filly! My whole body was shaking and couldn't stop. The tears couldn't stop. Oh, goddesses, no.
Fly steady, soldier.
Fly steady? The second Pegasus rounded on the first. You just shot a filly! Hellmare. I'd killed the filly, just as surely as Brightwing had. I'd killed her by trying to help. The image of her vanishing in a spreading cloud of pinkish glitter kept playing over and over in my mind. I couldn't think of anything else. The first Pegasus, Brightwing, turned to her accuser.
We had our orders, and you will obey them. Now, fly steady.
She wasn't running to warn Radar or to hide him. She was just scared. I take it back, I cried out silently to Celestia and Luna. I take it back. I didn't try to help. I didn't let her see me. Please, please bring her back. Please, let me take it back. But no amount of regret or pleading with the goddesses would make the sparkling ash spiral upwards and be reborn in a flash of light.
We know we can't do that, soldier.
Brightwing insisted defensively.
Now, either shut up and fly steady, or get your tail back to the raptor, and I'll deal with you later.
I didn't sign up for this, the Pegasus said, turning away from Brightwing and flying back the same way he came. The thunder of the harbour guns signalled the arrival of the Raptors. Friendship City had not given up their resident Dashite. The Enclave began a full attack at the 69th minute mark. I'd crawled over to the ashes of the Arbu filly, gathering them together with my telekinesis. That's as far as I'd gotten when Calamity found me, flying in loaded down with all our weapons. "Little Pip, what are you doing?" he shouted as a lancing blast of crimson magical energy spread through the upper levels of the Pony of Friendship, slicing through homes and catwalks. The Pegasus grabbed me, dragging me away as chunks of walkway and scaffolding came raining down. I couldn't find anything to put her in, I said, looking up into the eyes of my friend, showing him the glowing ball of ash wrapped gingerly in my magic. It was so small. It seemed hardly enough to have been a filly. Calamity sat me down in the shelter of sparkles, as another blast from one of the Raptor's magical energy cannons burned a hole the size of a chariot through the side of the statue, engulfing Worm Smiles in. If there were any ponies inside, they were incinerated within seconds by the fuchsia-coloured flames. Calamity looked at the ash I was holding, his bewildered expression shifting to wounded understanding. He looked around and dug an empty Sparkle Cola bottle out of a trash bin. "Here you go, little Pip. Put her in here." My world had become that ash. With gentle reverence, I magically funneled the filly into the bottle. It glowed a soft off pink. I floated out a bottle cap, screwing it on tight. "Okay, little Pip, she's taken care of now," Calamity was telling me. "Now, I need you back. I know it's hard, and I know it hurts, but we need you here right now." I stared at him, wondering how he could be so close, and yet so far away. "Do you understand me, little Pip?" All around us, ponies were fleeing in terror, trying to get to the exits. They didn't care that there weren't enough boats. The thundering of the harbour guns were thinning out. Calamity slapped me, hard, across the face with his forehoof. I gasped, lifting a hoof to my cheek in surprise. I could hear screams and nearby explosions. "Ponies' lives are counting on you, little Pip," Calamity said, drawing my attention to a focus. "Y'all gotta pull yourself together. Hurt tomorrow, help today." I slowly nodded, coming to my senses like a swimmer fighting her way to the ocean's surface. Tucking the bottle of ashes into my saddlebag, I looked to Calamity. What can I do?" Calamity smiled, looking ready to collapse in relief.
"They came in with 3 raptors,"
Radar told us as we watched one of the sniper platforms in the crown of the Pony of Friendship.
"Our guns took out one of them."
I looked into the sky at the 2 dark warships hovering over Friendship Island as dozens of Pegasi swarmed about the statue. Chief Lantern and 2 security ponies fired at the attacking Enclave soldiers as quickly as they could find targets, ducking behind low barricades as the Pegasi returned fire. Behind me, Calamity swiftly assembled Spitfire's thunder. The cannons of the left Raptor flashed, sending magical energy bursts into the statue, tearing through its reinforced copper skin and into the city beyond. The other Raptor floated impassively.
"That second raptor stopped firing after taking out one of the last harbor guns,"
Radar informed me.
"We need to take out that last raptor."
Shaking his head, he added,
"Really wish I knew why they were so hard to get me."
Radar looked at me apologetically.
"I would have gone out myself, but Freshwater wouldn't let me. Threatened to shoot me if I tried."
He looked up.
"I'd go now, but it don't matter no more."
He was right. The Enclave had gone this far. They weren't planning on leaving survivors. An Enclave Pegasus pulling a war wagon dove towards the pony spilling out of the statue. With a kick of her hoof, a door beneath the wagon snapped open, and bombs began to fall. Helpless ponies below were rent apart, their bodies flung in tatters by detonations of savage energy. Calamity stood up, taking aim. Spitfire's thunder tore at the air, the shot piercing the war wagon. The explosion ripped apart the sky. "Good shot!" Radar praised gently. Calamity was breathing heavily, looking near tears himself. "Not fast enough."
"Ain't none of this worth me,"
Radar said. I followed his gaze to the blasted ground, bloody with the shredded bodies of innocent ponies. The crushing grief that had overwhelmed my soul was breaking apart, slowly replaced with a building war cry. This wasn't right. This was evil, and I had to stop it.
"I think you could turn this whole thing round if you shut down that last raptor,"
Radar repeated.
"I'd do it myself, but
He looked down.
not as fit as I used to be."
Looking up again, he added,
"Not a word to that to Dr. Freshwater, you hear?"
"We'll do it," I told Radar, turning to Calamity. "I have a plan." I stared at the burning wreckage of the docks. The Enclaves had bombed the ships. No pony was getting off the island by boat. The delivery wagon for absolutely everything was scattered in burning fragments across the water and along the sagging, demolished piers. I looked to Ditsy Do in empathetic horror, but the glowing ghoul merely shrugged, writing, "It's just a wagon," on her chalkboard. As the glowing Pegasus flew out over the devastation, my eyes caught sight of something crimson and green floating in the water. A pony's forehoof, bloody and ragged. A memory bubbled to the surface of my brain.
"Help me,"
Ambrosia had rasped. She'd been dying inside of her armour, pinned by part of the terminal bank, half sunk in the tainted water that was spraying into the room. Her body already twisted and malformed. I hadn't been able to reach her. I'd barely been quick enough spreading Zenith's goop over the ragged stump of my hind leg before I had bled out. I downed every healing potion I had, but the loss of blood had left me so weak and dizzy, I couldn't levitate anything heavier than one of those coffee cups. My blood had left a wet crimson river, pouring out from beneath the slab that was holding me down, flowing down into the tainted water, making it pink in the light of my pitbuck.
"Help me,"
she whimpered, her voice filled with torment.
"Please, please kill me."
I'd wanted to. For the love of merciful Celestia, I had so wanted to. But shy of trying to beat her to death with a coffee cup, there had been nothing I could do. Then, a voice in my head had reminded me that wasn't true. There was one thing I could do. I remembered focusing my magic, lifting up her visor. Her eyes hadn't been in the right places anymore. Only one of them, engorged and strange, had stared out at me, tortured beyond the telling of it. As I stood near the docks, watching the bobbing severed hoof, I recalled thinking, maybe not a sword, but there is enough blood for a dagger. The memory broke, leaving me shaken. I tried to dredge up what had happened next, but there was only blackness where the memory should have been. It took her less than a minute, fluttering about the debris and floating crates before our friendly ghoul returned to me, her eyes looking in different directions, a smile on her muzzle, and a stealth buck in her hooves. I shook myself from my morbid reverie and added the stealth buck to the other equipment I'd acquisitioned. I shuddered. What had happened to me that I could look at a poor pony's dismembered stump and not want to scream? The equestrian wasteland had poisoned my soul. Above us, the hostile raptor fired a blast at the crown of the pony of friendship, engulfing one of the sniper platforms in deadly magic. I pulled Ditsy-Do with me, taking cover against the copper robes of the statue as chunks of burning flesh rained down. Calamity swooped up next to us, dodging fallen debris as he dropped 2 sets of Enclave armor at my hooves, scavenging from the body of the Pegasus I'd taken out by the snipers. 2? I asked him. I can't wear those, I pointed out dryly. Horn, no wings. Ditsy-Do jammed me with a hoof. What? My eyes widened as I literally put 2 and 2 together. Wait, Ditsy-Do, you can't come with us. We're going into a fight. She's lived 200 years, Calamity reminded me. I reckon she can take care of herself. Little me is 2 months out of the stable? Ditsy-Doo levelled a look at me as explosions shook the island. Calamity hefted up Spitfire's thunder, searching for the war wagon on a bombing run. Okay, fine. You're coming, I acquisitioned, locking the stealth bike into my pip leg and locking everything we weren't taking, including Calamity's battle saddle, in a nearby crate. Suit up. Ditsy-Doo gave me a one-hoof salute and started dressing, hiding her brilliant, ghoulish body completely inside the black insectoid armour.
This is Raptor Pyrocumulus to Raptor Altostratus. Respond immediately.
As Calamity and Ditsy-Doo, disguised as Enclave soldiers, flew as closer to the black maw of the attacking raptor's hangar, my pip leg had latched onto a new signal. One which wasn't playing the Enclave's continuous public broadcast, and decrypted it. I found myself listening to the Pegasi's inter-warship military frequency.
This is Commander Thundershear of the Raptor Pyrocumulus to Commander Icebreak of the Raptor Altostratus. Why have you stopped firing?
The authoritative voice of the commanding mare asked, clearly attempting to communicate with the unresponsive second raptor.
You are required to respond.
Calamity landed on the raptor's lower flight deck, dropping my invisible self and the sacks I was carrying onto the black metal floor lined with small, pulsing guide lights. He trotted up to the hangar door, looking over the access terminal. I moved up next to him, Ditsy-Doo watching our flank as he attempted to hack into it. As expected, the access terminal had a cloud interface. I could offer him advice, but once again, I was denied the chance to do this myself.
Commander Thundershear, this is Commander Icebreak. The enemy is defenseless. The battle has been won. Raptor Altostratus is standing down.
A second Pegasus mare replied in a dignified, reserved voice.
When you're standing by to retrieve the prisoner, as soon as Raptor Pyrocumulus disengages.
Ditsy-Doo gave a little dance in her armour. Apparently, she was picking up the transmission too. The rebellion of the second raptor filled her heart with delight. I almost got it, Calamity grunted. I turned back to the terminal, scanning the lines of code he had brought up. Somewhere in that matrix was the password.
Commander Icebreak, those are not your orders. Resume firing. With all due respect, Commander Thundershear, no.
After 2 failed tries, we located the correct password. Pragmatism. The heavy blast door sealing off the hangar slid open. Inside, the high ceiling was laced with humming lights, identical to those I grew up with in Stable 2, but more sparsely placed, leaving the hangar feeling dark and cold. Large, heavily armoured windows along the roof let in the grey twilight of late evening, between 2 mounted magical energy turrets. I imagined that the hangar would have been bright and almost pleasant if those windows were letting in the pure sunlight of midday above the cloud curtain. Enclave technicians and internal soldiers were in the light combat version of the Enclave armour moved about busily. Rows of war wagons lined the edges of the hangar. Red fireboxes were mounted at intervals along the walls. Racks of bombs stood between the observation windows at the far back. On the other side, Enclave officers split their attention between watching the hangar and monitoring the war chatter.
Damn it, Icebreak! Operation Cauterize is in effect. That is straight from the Enclave High Council.
The mare commanding the raptor we had boarded reminded her peer.
You have your orders. Now, lock your targets and resume firing. Or you and your entire crew will be guilty of disaffection.
Ditsy-Doo and Calamity moved off together, moving like they had a purpose, like they belonged. So long as they didn't do anything suspicious, they should be ignored. Meanwhile, I galloped silently towards the first war wagon. I only had 1 stranded stealth buck's worth of time to do this, and I'd already spent half of that just getting up here and inside.
Raptor Pyrocumulus, the ponies of Raptor Altostratus regret to inform you that we will not slaughter helpless ground ponies, no matter what your orders say.
I reached the first wagon and bucked a switch to open its bomb door, floating 2 of the homemade bombs out of the first sack. I wedged them up next to the war wagon's payload. The bombs had been built using the schematics for the bottle cap mine, that Dixie-Doo had given me. It felt like ages ago. But instead of cherry bombs and bottle caps, these lunchboxes carried explosive munitions used in the, now destroyed, smaller caliber harbour guns. Mayor Black Seas had donated the supplies. Ditsy-Doo had helped me make them. A lot of them.
What?
Commander Thundershoe sputtered in disbelief as I moved to the next war wagon.
By our great leaders, this is mutiny icebreak. Think about what you're doing. They'll have your crew for treason.
There was no response from Commander Icebreak or the other Raptor. I planted 2 more bombs and moved to a 3rd war wagon. Shadows played across the hangar. I looked up, watching through the ceiling windows as a huge magical energy cannons mounted on the Raptor's top deck swiveled to the left. I could hear the belly-mounted cannons still firing on Friendship City.
Raptor Ultrastratus! This is Raptor Pyrocumulus!
The commander barked.
You will lock onto your targets and resume your firing, or we will fire on you!
Finishing with the 3rd wagon, I dashed to the first of the bomb racks, setting bombs as quickly as I could. I spared a glance towards Calamity and Ditsy-Doo. They'd been waylaid by an Enclave officer who was demanding something of our speechless ghoul. "She can't talk," Calamity was saying, prevaricatingly swiftly. "Bad a wound to the throat." Beside him, Ditsy-Doo nodded, eagerly backing Calamity's story. "Look, I'm her CO, so anything you need to ask her, you can ask me." The Enclave officer, a youthful grey buck with a black mane and a quill for a cutie mark, looked between my 2 disguising friends, insisting, "We don't have any soldiers on Raptor Pyrocumulus with that kind of injury." He stared at Calamity suspiciously. "And I don't recognise that accent. Where did you say you were from again?" Every pony in the hangar froze, turning their gazes upwards, as Raptor Pyrocumulus opened fire on her sister. I scrambled to place my makeshift explosives on the 2nd and 3rd bomb racks. I was getting close to where the officer was interrogating my Pegasus friend. Calamity flapped his wings in irritation. "Look," he grumbled. "We're from the Ultrastratus. Command over there's gone disloyal. We got out where we could." "Well, that is to be commended," the buck told him, retching his eyes from the windows above. "But under the circumstances, I'm afraid I'm going to have to place you both in the brig until the battle is over." The young officer revolved in place, looking for the closest soldier. "Your loyalty will be determined by a tribunal once we're cloudside again." "Ah, hell!" Calamity hissed as he stepped back, striking the officer down with a sting of his armoured tail. Ditsy-Doo trotted, her body language betraying shock. "Time to go!" Calamity shouted as bolts of coloured light whizzed throughout the hangar. The soldiers and defensive turrets were acting swiftly. I floated the signal detonator out next to me, dropping the sack of lunchbox explosives at the base of the last bomb rack, and galloped. Beams of magical energy struck at Ditsy-Doo and Calamity, peeling away their protective, magically powered armour. One of the shots disintegrated a plate of Ditsy-Doo's armour, the sickly yellow-green light of her irradiated good body now shining out of the hole in the black carapace. I kicked the stealth buck out of my pip leg, giving the turrets and soldiers another target. Thunder rumbled throughout the hangar from outside as one of the Pyrocumulus's cannons struck something vital in the Ultrastratus. Calamity and Ditsy-Doo shot out of the hangar, several Pegasi in hot pursuit. I felt the first scorching blast lance off my Cancelot police armour, sizzling it as I reached the landing platform. I wrapped myself in my magic, making myself weightless, and jumped. Beneath us, the canted form of Raptor Ultrastratus was billowing smoke. Its left side thundercloud dispersed, gaping holes glowing in its framework as it dropped slowly out of the sky. One of the Pyrocumulus's belly cannons swiveled and fired on the ruined warship as it crashed into the Friendship City bridge, tearing it apart catastrophically. I triggered the detonator. Behind me, light and heat erupted from the hangar of the Pyrocumulus, a draconic roar building with a cascade of explosions. A blast of fire buffeted me, sending me spinning through the sky, my magic imploding as the bomb racks went up like a volcanic Armageddon, magical fire rending the Enclave warship in half. This time, it was Ditsy-Doo who caught me. Her Enclave armor was perforated. Her helmet was gone. Glowing ichor seeped out of numerous painful wounds. But she was grinning. One of her eyes staring at me as she gave a squeaky victory cheer. My heart lifted at her jubilation, but then sank again as I looked out at the burning pony of friendship. The smoke of an incinerated city, and murdered ponies blackly billowing out of glowing wounds, carved by destructive magical energy. We almost had made it to Fetlock before the Enclave caught us. It was the dead of night. Thunderclouds above rumbled angrily, still threatening a terrible storm. We had fled Friendship Island, after magically snatching up the crate with all our belongings, drawing off as many of the remaining Enclave soldiers as we could. Most of them had abandoned the fight when all their warships had fallen, but a few had been determined enough to continue mop up, and were engaged by the remaining security ponies. Thanks to our help, a little over a quarter of Friendship City's population still survived. Radar and Chief Lantern were not amongst the living. Both were killed when the pyrocumulus took out their sniper platform. Calamity had become both withdrawn and laconic since the news. The survivors were still trapped on the island. The pyrocumulus had destroyed the boats and docks. The crash of the Ultra Stratus had wiped out a section of the bridge. Once we got back to Stable 29, we intended to enlist the aid of the Applejack's Rangers. I was certain that the needs of nearly 200 suffering ponies would draw Velvet Remedy out of her shell. But Ditsy-Do was wounded, more than she let on, and as we drew close to the edge of Manhattan, she had begun flagging. So, we landed in the ruins of a building which, based on the plate and silverware design still visible on the badly deteriorated and half-burned sign, had once been a diner. Or, from the horseshoe motif running along the top of the standing wall, possibly a shoe shop. When the ruins had turned up empty, Calamity had taken Spitfire's thunder and flown into the rubble of the apartment building next door, in search of food, Radaway, and anything else he could find. This left me sitting on the edge of the ruins, staring across the street. Ditsy-Do had discarded the ruined Enclave armor, and was splashing playfully in a glowing puddle of radioactive waste, spilled from the back of a wagon bearing the MAS logo. I couldn't help but smile at her antics, as the glowing ghoul rolled in the waste, the radiation healing her wounds. This wasn't helping her condition, but now that the doctors of Friendship City had taught her how to relieve herself of the build-up quickly, Ditsy-Do was considerably less worried. Catching my eye, she shook herself off, flinging glowing goop over the wagon and the rubble around her, then began to trot back to me, closing her eyes and concentrating as she did so. Her body pulsed with a flash of radiation that drove her face planting into the broken asphalt of the street. She stood back up, her eyes reeling in different directions, then giggled at her own clumsiness. She reached me. She set down her chalkboard, scribbling out, "Absolutely everything does not have boats. Must fix." "Don't worry," I assured her. "We'll get those ponies to safety." Ditsy-Do nodded happily and kicked her chalkboard up, dipping her head and expertly catching the neck loop so that it hung around against her fleshy breast.
"Do not move."
The armor-augmented voice cut through the darkness. I immediately cursed myself, bringing out my eyes forward sparkle.
"We have you surrounded."
There were red lights all over my compass. I looked towards the crate that still held most of my weapons. I had retrieved little Macintosh, but the zebra rifle and the sniper rifle were still inside. I did a quick mental calculation of how many armor-piercing bullets I had left for my favourite gun, how long it would take to reload, and the chances they would kill my now unarmoured ghoul companion before I could take them down. With a heavy sigh, I responded, "We surrender." Ditsy-Do poked at the blue field of our magical energy cage with her hoof, making an owl sound, something she didn't need a tongue for. I stared through the field of the Enclave soldiers milling about outside. A technician Pegasus sat next to the terminal, which controlled the energy cages. There were others, but ours was the only one occupied. I noted glumly that it had a cloud interface. Next to it was an enclave crate where little Macintosh was imprisoned. My pitbuck was clicking steadily. Being locked in here with Ditsu was bathing me in radiation. I noticed gloomily that the scrapes and bruises I had acquired in Friendship City were all fading away, that my stomach was beginning to churn unpleasantly, threatening to divest me of my precious lunch. Poke. Ow! Poke. Ow! These ponies aren't from the attack on Friendship City, I observed with a whisper, watching an Enclave officer toss her emptied bottle of Sunrise Sarsaparilla into a trash bin that was beginning to overflow. I glimpsed an Enclave antennae array as they marched us to the cages. They've been camped in here for a while now. I looked to Ditzy-Doo. Any guesses as to what they're up to? Ditzy-Doo looked at me and shook her head, the last wisp of her mane flopping about. Then, she turned back to the blue, crackling wall in front of her. Poke. Ow. A mustard-coated Pegasus in the light Enclave combat armor. Identical, I noted, to the armor I'd first seen Rainbow Dash showing off to her friends. Stopped walking his patrol to lift his visor and glare at Ditzy-Doo.
Would you cut that out?
He growled.
Y'all are giving me a headache.
Poke. Ow.
Hey!
He barked at me.
Can't you make your little monster knock it off?
Nope, I replied as I caught movement in the corner of my eye. Gazing out, I saw Calamity moving up on a higher ridge of rubble. Our cavalry had arrived. I shifted away and lowered my head, trying to look forlorn and pathetic, burying my face in my hoofs to allow myself to serendipitously watch Calamity without alerting any of the ponies keeping an eye on us. Calamity shifted Spitfire's thunder into position, peering down the scope of the Pegasi all around us. I waited, my nerves alive with anticipation. Calamity stared at the other Pegasi, and didn't open fire. Calamity? I whispered to myself. Slowly, Calamity pulled back, sliding Spitfire's thunder away, and disappeared. Ditzy-Doo dropped her chalkboard next to me. He isn't going to rescue us? Calamity? I thought, feeling apprehensive and a little hurt. What are you doing? Two Pegasi in fearsome onyx armor marched Calamity into the camp at the tips of their vicious sharp tails. The rust-coloured Dashite walked in front of them, wings held high. Oh, damn it, Calamity!
Up you go!
One of the Pegasi ordered, as a technician lowered the field around one of the magical energy cages. She prodded Calamity up onto the platform. He cantered around to stare at her, as the blue field washed over up between them. I moved as close to him as our cage would allow. The shielded cage was beginning to feel uncomfortably warm. Calamity! I hissed. What? Calamity just looked at me sadly. Sorry, little Pip. I just couldn't. Even after what they just did? Are you serious? Calamity shifted uncomfortably and nodded, offering no explanation. But an explanation was forthcoming.
Well, look who we have here.
It was the Pegasus buck who had growled at Ditzy-Doo. He was trotting up, looking like a colt who had just gotten his cutie mark.
If it ain't my little brony.
His what now?
Hello, Pride.
Calamity said sourly.
I see they're just letting any pony into the Enclave these days. Hey!
The mustard-coated pony hissed.
I ain't the traitor here.
No! Calamity jabbed.
Y'all just washed out. What, 3 times? No less.
You know him? I asked. Pride turned to me with a grin.
Oh, are y'all friends?
He looked from Calamity to us, and back in exaggerated astonishment.
Well, what do you know? Little Calamity actually managed to make some friends.
He rolled his eyes, adding,
A munchkin-mare and a monster.
Pride smirked at us.
Y'all really should have chosen a better friend.
The Enclave buck said nastily.
Calamity here's a flying disaster.
Leaning close to me, just beyond the blue field, Pride nickered like he was about to tell me a secret. I stood up, glaring through the energy barrier at him.
You know why my father named him Calamity?
The buck asked far too loudly. Father? Pride was Calamity's brother? No wonder he wouldn't shoot. I suddenly flashed back to the very first argument Velvet had with us about eating meat.
Oh, we can eat meat just alright. Just don't like it too much. Ain't really good for our diet,
Calamity had asserted.
which mostly meant them shoving the disgusting things down my throat.
Calamity's brother grinned maliciously.
'Cause he killed our mother coming out.
I dropped back to my haunches, the cruelty of Pride's claim knocking the wind from me. The little pony in my head cried at the pain such vicious words must be causing my friend. But Calamity only looked bored.
That again?
He drawled, unimpressed.
You ain't seen me for 6 years, and in all that time, you ain't come up with anything new?
The orange-maned Pegasus shook his head.
Back when I was a blank flame colt, and y'all would tell me that, I'd bawl for hours. But in case you ain't noticed, that was a long time ago, and I ain't a little fool no more.
Pride sneered.
Really? Strange. I don't see no cutie mark on you, baby brother.
Calamity rolled his eyes.
And you know why?
He spat. The mustard-coated Enclave pony laughed, stomping a hoof on the ground.
That I do.
He peered into Calamity's cage to his little brother.
And you should be thanking me. Branding that mark off your flanks was my rite of passage into the Enclave.
I reeled. Calamity's own brother had branded his cutie mark off?
Then again, y'all should be thanking me.
Pride snarked.
Who wants a picture of a hammer on their flank anyway?
He swiveled back to Calamity.
Ow, that got a sting, knowing you abandoned your own kin, became a filthy traitor, when all you had to do was wait a few more years. My loyalty was, and has always been, to the ponies of Equestria.
Calamity glared back.
Ain't my fault the Enclave's allegiance is only to itself. If they were what they pretended to be, they'd have been down here with me. Still pouting them horse apples, little brother?
Pride jabbed.
Well, in case y'all missed it, we're here right now. So, Pride,
Calamity asked tiredly.
What's this really about? 'Cause it ain't the Grand Pegasus Enclave swooping in to the rescue. I ain't seen a single civilian. This is a military operation, through and through.
Pride nickered.
Haven't y'all been listening to the radio? There's a bastard pony named Red Eye who's messing with shit that ain't his to mess with.
You mean the Calamity quickly corrected himself.
Sustainable Pegasus Project? Yep. Something he did alerted the higher-ups, and they started digging into all the shit he's been doing with one of our towers. None too bright, the Red Eye. Left all sorts of clues as to what he's been dipping his hooves into.
I frowned. Careless wasn't Red Eye's nature. On the other hoof, if the Enclave could override DJ Pony's signal from the MAS EBS, they could very possibly be able to access things Red Eye reasonably expected to be secure. Or, Red Eye could be setting them up somehow. From what I saw in Friendship City, the Enclave was sowing the seeds of their own destruction just from being here. And that was before taking into account what my friends and I were going to do to them.
And what's that got to do with blasting the royal city out the side of the mountain?
Calamity questioned.
Why don't you just fly over and kill him? What's Operation Cauterize?
Pride pulled up short.
Where'd you hear about that?
I had my sources, Calamity said cryptically, holding a hoof to his breast. Pride glared at my friend for a good spell, before finally saying,
Don't do the Enclave no good to just kill the bastard. Even if we take him down, some pony else might just step into his hoof prints and try to finish what he started.
So, what? Did they have to take out Red Eye and Stern?
To protect the Enclave and the Pegasi race, we gotta take out Red Eye, those he may have told, and any pony else who might know about the Sustainable Pegasus Project.
Pride stated firmly.
And get rid of the last Earthside hubs of the damn Ministry of Awesome, so no pony else can never stumble across Red Eye did.
Goddesses. That's why they were after Radar. He'd been in the Ministry of Awesome. There would be Enclave troops hunting us down for the same reason. The gears in my mind started churning. Homage was a target too. Who else? The little pony in my head started piecing things together, a picture that filled me with dread. The Enclave had tried to wipe Friendship City off of the map.
Tends not to leave any loose ends.
The voice I now recognised as Commander Thundershear had said. She didn't want to just murder Radar. He might have told other members of the science team, and they might have told friends or family. In Thundershear's mind, the whole city was infected, and they all had to perish. How many degrees of separation before the Enclave wouldn't consider some pony a threat? How far were they planning to go? Y'all are talking about mass murder, Calamity breathed. Ain't no way the Enclave thinks you can be Equestria savior after this. His eyes narrowed, his gaze sharper than a dagger. But then, they don't ever plan on rejoining Equestria, do they? Pride gave Calamity a pitying look. So, what's the plan then? Calamity stomped. The civilians gotta see something's up. The Enclave planning to write this off as a big scouting mission? Or, we thought that maybe it was time for us to descend, but after a prolonged exploration, we realized that just ain't feasible. Best we wait another 200 years? Something like that, Pride said dismissively. We sat in our magical cages in silence as dawn began to colour the horizon. I was supremely tired, but none of us actually felt like sleeping. Calamity had apologised again, several times in fact, until I nearly shouted at him that it was okay. I'd spent the last 2 hours contemplating how I could levitate the weapons I could get my magic on, and use them to wipe out the camp. Right now, while most of it was asleep, I figured I had a good chance of pulling it off. But then, we'd still be stuck in these cages. I wiped the sweat from my forehead, trembling slightly. My airfest was warning me that my radiation exposure had reached critical levels. I had to try something, but it would have to be something that worked. I wouldn't survive in here long enough to get another chance. Ditsy Doo had huddled on the far corner of the cage, keeping away from me as best as she could. But in this smaller space, it really didn't matter. Calamity was laying down in his cage, looking morose. I'm sure Pride was wrong. I told my friend through the shields between us. About your father, I mean. He wouldn't have named you after the death of your mother. Calamity's muzzle gave me a weary smile. I could never bring myself to ask, but knowing my father, he probably did. Luna's mercy. That was horrible. I'm sorry, Calamity, but I kinda hate your father right now. Calamity smiled, sitting up. That's okay, little Pip. He'd be happy to hear it. I winced. Every pony hates my father. That's his job. Most loathed bastard in all the Enclave. Your father's in the Enclave too? I breathed, my mind suddenly conjuring images of Calamity's father as a member of the Enclave High Council. Possibly even the stowing behind Operation Cauterize. Goddesses, don't put Calamity through that. It's not fair. Yep, Calamity said, a grim little smile playing over his face. General Sergeant Navarro. He stood up, raising his wings and dropping his voice mockingly. A hammer? Your cutie mark's a fucking hammer? That'd better be a hammer to down your enemies, boy. Or you're the sorriest excuse for a son that I ever did see. Wow. Calamity sat back down, chuckling a little despite himself. Yep, that's my dad. He shook his mane, looking at me. Any surprise all 4 of his books ended up in the Enclave? Suddenly, my mother felt like a blessing. So, I said, trying to strike up some sort of conversation while I searched for a solution to our predicament. Your cutie mark was a hammer? Calamity looked up. Yep, and a screwdriver. Your cutie mark was tools? It was not what I'd expected. I would have imagined my friend with crosshairs on his flank, or a bullseye. Although, that would hardly be the best thing to be sporting on your flank in the equestrian wasteland. Still, that was Calamity. The pony who delighted in fixing up the Sky Bandit and making it fly again. Who put on armour and a pony rack. Who repaired everything from firearms to dresses. I thought of him as a sharpshooter, but thinking about it, I realised that every weapon he used aside from Spitfire's thunder was a weapon he had modified or built himself. He'd even jerry-rigged his Enclave armour to allow him to shoot it without wearing the helmet. Ditsy Doo trotted up, pressing her chalkboard against the shield, making it crackle. Calamity peered, reading, "Starry?" He looked at me, baffled. Cocking my head at Ditsy-Do, I guessed, "I think she wants to hear your cutie mark story." With a smile, I added, "I think I do too." "Cutie marks don't matter," Calamity told us drearily. "Come on," I encouraged, clopping my hooves on the floor of the cage. "Story! Story!" Ditsy-Do joined in. Calamity rolled his eyes and shot me a look. "Fine, but y'all gotta share yours too." He tipped his desperado hat, thinking. "When I was a little colt," Calamity began, "all I ever wanted to do was make my father proud of me, which was nearly impossible, even for my big brothers. I was never going to be as strong as him, so I practiced shooting. First year I ever tried the sharpshooters competition, I came in third. Father was so disappointed." I winced. I tried to tell him that I tried my best, but he told me that meant my best was pathetic. I said it wasn't my fault, that the old gun he gave me was all weight and funny and hard to aim. He told me that I should have fixed it better then. Calamity shook his head, digging a hoof at the cell floor. "So that's what I did. Spent all year tinkering with that gun, fixing the sight, building a custom muzzle grip, and weight to the shoulder brace so it was more balanced. Next year, I placed first." Calamity looked up at me, tears in his eyes. That was the first time my father ever smiled at me. First time he ever told me I had done good. He stared into the morning sky. The rising sun was painting the clouds with glorious orange and pinks and golds. When I got home and took off my competitor's button, there they were, a hammer and a screwdriver. Best day of my life. He looked down, reaching back a hoof to ruffle his mane. "Till I met you in Velvet, of course." I was dead last amongst my peers to get my cutie mark. I told them. All the other colts and fillies who had been in my class had gotten their cutie marks a full 2 years before, and the overman wanted to put me to work. I explained. Normally, in Stable 2, we're assigned the jobs we would have for the rest of our lives based on our cutie marks, but without mine, the overmare just couldn't assign me. So she'd drawn some ancient bylaw created by Stable 2's first overmare, which allowed her to have me temporarily apprentice under a variety of positions, at least until something sparked my cutie mark to appear. Mostly, she had me try out a number of administrative and technical apprenticeships, since those were the areas most unicorns were assigned to anyway. I looked down at the pit buck grossly infused into the flesh of my leg. We were supposed to get our pit bucks after we got our cutie marks, and our first job assignment. Biting my lower lip, I thought back. One day, while I was apprenticing with the head pit buck technician, a worried couple slipped into the pit buck technician stall. Their son had gone missing. He had run off during his cutie mark party. Somehow, he'd gotten himself lost in the stable and they just couldn't find him. Calamity was staring at me, a little bewildered. He remembered how small and enclosed the stables were compared to the outside world. One of the most overlooked capabilities of a pit buck is that it can track tagged objects. Mostly this is used for the auto mapper. My pit buck came loaded with a whole slew of present location tags. I'm still getting surprised by occasionally, "Here you are" messages on my ice forward sparkle. I smiled a little, remembering how astonished I was that my pit buck knew the name of Sweet Apple Acres. Every pit buck has a tag, allowing any pony with that tag code and another pit buck to locate them. My mentor was asleep, which wasn't uncommon for him. So I hacked into his terminal and downloaded the tag for the Colt's new pit buck into one of the ones I'd been working on. I took the tools that allowed me to unlock it and put the pit buck on, bringing out my eyes forward sparkle for the very first time. Keying the EFS compass to the Colt's tag, I slipped through the stable until I found him. The Colt had managed to get himself locked in the maintenance shed for the apple orchard. It was after hours and no pony had been able to hear his banging and yelling. I didn't want to get the Colt in trouble, so instead of fetching one of the gardener ponies, I picked the lock and got him out myself. I gave a weak grin. Of course, he went and told every pony how I had rescued him, and so I got in trouble for appropriating the pit buck and picking the lock. But at least my mentor covered for me about the hacking, and the overmare wasn't going to press the issue, seeing as my new cutie mark dictated that I would be with him for a good long while. Smiling softly about the memory, I concluded, it was the first time I'd ever felt I'd done something useful. Something really good. I don't think either of us had expected Ditsy Doo to join in the storytelling. Hell, we couldn't even tell what the ghoul's cutie mark had been. So both Calamity and I were surprised when the glowing Pegasus dropped her chalkboard at her hooves and prodded me to read, and then prodded me harder, reminding me to read aloud so Calamity could hear. It took a great many pauses, while Ditsy Doo wiped the chalkboard clean and wrote a few more words before a simple story was told. Uncle owned a moving wagon company. Uncle let me help. He didn't let me do too much carrying. Said I was clumsy, but he let me ride around on the wagon and call me his little mascot. I liked it. It was fun to help ponies move into a new home. I liked seeing them happy, especially families. Super especially when they had fillies or colts my age. Once, there was a family who was sad about moving. They had a little filly and a little colt, but they were scared of me because my eyes were different. So, I made funny faces and got them to laugh at me. Then they were happy. Then, I took them back to where my uncle kept all the packing supplies, and I showed them the most fun thing in the entire world. Bubble wrap. They loved popping all the bubbles, especially little Pokey. We had fun all day long. Uncle told me that was when I got my cutie mark, but I was having too much fun to notice. I'd almost come up with a plan when Pride snuck past our cages into the terminal. Poking it with a hoof, he brought down the walls of magical energy. Calamity jumped, leaping off the cage platform. What the hey? Just go, Pride hissed. I whispered to Calamity, pointing at the Enclave crate the little Macintosh was locked away in. Open that, Calamity said, pointing his hoof. And we'll go. Pride gnashed his teeth in exasperation, and went to work on the crate. So, Calamity said as the crate hissed open. I floated out little Macintosh, and the few other items they had taken from Ditsy Doo and me. We escaped. Something like that. I don't know. But y'all gotta go. Pride looked around nervously. Listen, word just came down. Operation Cauterize is extended to all Dashites. Next time I see you, I'll be shooting you understand? Calamity nodded. Gee, I have the sudden unnatural urge to hug you, big brony. Ditsy Doo moved up, holding her chalkboard in her teeth with two words written across it. New Appaloosa? Pride gave us an ugly look. Red Eye's favourite trading town? The one that gave him the bomb he set off to assassinate a member of the High Council? Enclave dispatched a full regiment there at first light. Ditsy Doo stumbled back at the news, the chalkboard dropping from her open muzzle. Monster, Pride said darkly. I'd be surprised if there's even a crater left by now. Ditsy's eyes were wide, her pupils huge and centered dead ahead. Something beyond pride, a strangled squeak coming from her throat. She didn't need to speak for me to know the one thing on her mind. Silverbell. I heard the little lavender filly's voice from 2 days ago, crying out, Mummy! Ditsy Doo broke into flight, headed for New Appaloosa. Calamity scooped me up, giving chase, diverting only enough for me to telekinetically scoop up Spitfire's thunder from the rubble where he'd left it. Four raptors were positioning themselves over New Appaloosa, squads of black armoured Pegasi flying about the sky between them. The town was still standing, but we could see Enclave soldiers swooping to strike down ponies who were trying to flee the walls. Ditsy Doo pulled up, hovering in the air, a look of dismay etched on her face. Calamity bristled, his eyes narrowing in anger as the Pegasus dove at a running mare, opening up with a rapid fire of burst of light that turned the fleeing pony to glowing blue dust. Damn it, little Pip! We gotta stop this! He was near the breaking point. I could hear it in his voice. Before we could react, Ditzy zoomed forward again, flying right into the heart of the Enclave forces. The Pegasi whipped about as the glowing one shot past them. They started chasing her, but quickly stopped shooting after their first blast missed and hit one of the raptors. Calamity sit me down and started off after her, but I grabbed him by the tail with my teeth. Whoa, don't, that's suicide! I knew we were about to lose Ditzy, and probably Zenith and Silverbell. I was damned if I was going to lose Calamity too. We need a plan! Ditzy was stopped in the center of the Enclave forces. They had surrounded her, but they couldn't shoot without risking hitting their own. Several armored Pegasi moved in, their tails curling to strike as soon as they got within range. Whoosh! The burst of light and radiation from the glowing Pegasus sent the encroaching Enclave Pegasi reeling, as Ditzy almost shot straight up into the air, beating her nearly featherless wings as fast and as hard as she could. The Enclave Pegasi gave chase. They started to fire again, but Ditzy repeatedly blasted out radiation, each time blinding her pursuers as she shot it up higher. Two of the raptors swiveled their topside cannons around, scorching the air with magical death, but the huge weapons were too inaccurate to hit their quickly ascending target. After half a dozen missed shots, they left the escaping ghoul to the black armoured soldiers chasing her. The glow of Ditzy illuminated a patch of the dark storm clouds as she disappeared into them. Then, the glow faded and she was gone. The ponies following her stopped, hovering in the air. Several began to turn back. Inside, I knew that she would at any moment break through the top of the cloud curtain and see true sunlight for the first time in probably 200 years. The little pony in my head shed a tear. Then, reality snapped back. Ditzy had distracted the Enclave. She'd given us a window, and we were missing it. Okay, I said quickly to Calamity as I slipped the MG Stealth Buck 2 into my malformed pip leg. Here's the plan. Whoa, Calamity said, looking up. I turned, following his gaze as a spot of golden green light dropped out of the clouds. I knew what it was, but I still lifted my binoculars to be sure. The first drops of the promised storm began to fall. Ditzy had broken back through the cloud curtain, shooting past the top tier of hovering Enclave soldiers before they could react. The ones who had started back down turned and sped in to catch her. Whoosh! The pulse of radioactive light sent the black armoured Pegasi spinning out of control as she shot ahead like a rocket. The other Pegasi were reacting now, chasing after her, firing beams of multicoloured light. Most missed. I gasped as some did not. Whoosh! Ditzy jolted ahead, moving even faster. She was aiming right for the centre space between the Enclave's raptors. The raptors were in position now. Their belly cannons were taking aim at New Appaloosa below, preparing to cleanse the town off the face of the Equestrian map. My plan was forgotten as quickly as I had formed it. All I could do was watch. Whoosh! Ditzy was beyond the reach of her pursuers now, but not, it appeared, beyond the reach of their weapons. One of the Enclave ponies fired twin missiles at the ghoul Pegasus as she streaked by, seeming nothing more than a glowing blur. The missiles spun, magically locking onto her. They spiraled around each other, leaving a double helix of smoke in their wake as they chased her. Whoosh! The missiles were undeterred, and gaining speed, closing the distance as Ditzy beat her wings, arrowing down at the Enclave about to destroy her home and kill her daughter. She was moving so fast, the odd air of the equestrian wasteland seemed to be warping about her. Her body was glowing brighter and brighter as she focused, building up for another burst. The sickly light pouring from her body was rippling in the air, shearing off of her in washes of unearthly, diseased colours. The missile seemed to reach her at the same time she reached the raptors. Ditzy exploded. Footnote: maximum level. Quest perk added. Touched by Taint 3. Exposure to Taint has further altered your physiology. You are now 20% faster and stronger when you're basking in the warm glow of radiation. Your action points regenerate faster and faster the higher your level of radiation sickness becomes. Your unnatural lifespan has increased dramatically.